Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of our flagship stations, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. You can find Civic Center TV on Comcast Channel 15 at AT&T Channel 99. You can also find us on those channels in Birmingham on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, also in Bloomfield Township and Bloomfield Hills on those channels as well, and in Southfield on City Cable 15 of Southfield. Join us on Channel 10 in Waterford on the Media Network of Waterford, and in Orion Township and Lake Orion on Orion Neighborhood Television, or ONTV. You can also find us, of course, on the radio in Bloomfield Hills, Bloomfield Township, and Troy, and those areas on 88.1, the BIF, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District. Find us online on our website, civiccentertv.com, by clicking on our Watch Live link on your computer web browser. That's at the top of the page on the second from the right side. And on your smartphone web browser, it'll be in the left margin of the screen. We'll have a pull-out menu, and at the bottom of that menu, second up from the bottom, will be our Watch Live link. You can also watch us on our Facebook pages, facebook.com/CivicCenterTV15 and facebook.com/LakesFM, as well as on My Michigan TV or MyMy. Visit mymytv.com to learn more information. Find us live over there, find us on demand over there, see all their other original and imported programming, and find out how you can download their free smart TV and smartphone apps at mymytv.com. You can also learn more information about all of our partnering stations and get links to their direct websites for more information at our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, or by clicking on our Megacast link at civiccentertv.com. Where you'll also be able to get our full episodes and our individual interviews on demand there as well. They're usually posted by sometime mid to late afternoon on the day of our shows. Also on our website at civiccentertv.com, if you go to our coronavirus page, we have helpful information that's up to date and accurate from experts on the front line of the pandemic, from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division, so that you can keep up to date on the spread of COVID-19 in our community, on the variants of COVID-19, both Delta and Omicron, which are both going around here in the state of Michigan at this present time. Keep up to date on vaccines and boosters. If you need to get a booster shot, if you need to get vaccinated against COVID-19, where you can get vaccinated, where you can get your booster shots, other questions that you may have about either or can get answered at any of those three links there on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, and learn more about precautions that you can take this holiday season and beyond to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in our community and to protect yourself and your family from COVID-19 as we continue forward in this pandemic. Also on our coronavirus page, we have our top stories each and every day from a number of different news outlets across the state of Michigan, keeping you up to date both on COVID-19 and more. And our top story today, as the Michigan's highest court, the Supreme Court, recently ordered that October 27th closed-door meeting information, including 7 out of the 10 memos discussed in a private closed session with attorneys from the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, were to be made public. Bridge, Michigan released an article late yesterday. Here's what Michigan's redistricting panel discussed in secret. When the state's redistricting panel met in secret this year, attorneys for the commission pleaded that the group didn't need to keep the current majority-minority districts or create new ones. In the October 27th closed-door meeting, which lasted about 90 minutes, the commission's attorney said reducing the percentage of black voters in districts that have been predominantly black would be in compliance with the Voting Rights Act. Quote, your unpacking work was significant and never happened in almost 200-year history of the state, said Bruce Adelson, the commission's voting rights attorney, in a recording released late Monday following a lawsuit from Bridge, Michigan, and several other news sites. He was referring to the commission's work to reverse, quote, packing, which is known as the hyper-concentration of minorities in districts in order to reduce their political power. Bridge, Michigan, in this article, produced links to all 7 of those memos and that were made public due to this lawsuit, and you can find those linked from Bridge, Michigan on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. The commission's voting rights attorney Adelson claimed the commission could increase the clout of people of color and allow them to elect candidates of their choice by putting them in districts with minority populations of less than 50%. The recording of the secret meeting, along with 7 memos kept in private, were released 9 hours after the Supreme Court ordered the commission to make them public. The arguments aired during the private meeting, and contents of the memos are essentially the same as statements made in public by Adelson and other members of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, but the commission claimed that they were protected by attorney-client privilege, and releasing them would make it difficult for the panel to receive unfettered advice from their lawyers in a process fraught with the potential for litigation. The court disagreed 4-3 in a suit brought upon by Bridge, Michigan, the Detroit News, the Detroit Free Press, and the Michigan Press Association against the panel, which was created by voters in 2018 by constitutional amendment to draw voting districts every 10 years and do so in a public and transparent fashion. The High Court said that the redistricting panel violated the Constitution of the state when it made this information private. The panel's 15 proposed state legislative and congressional maps have received a significant pushback from black voters in southeastern Michigan and in Flint, who have said that the planned districts would disenfranchise them. Currently, Michigan has 17 state legislative minority-majority districts, but under the proposed districts, that number would be reduced to just a handful. Over the last few months, the commission has heard from hundreds of Michigan residents and advocacy groups, such as the union group Michigan AFL-CIO, who have said that the maps would hurt black voters. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights has also said the draft plans violated the Voting Rights Act. But Adelson, the lawyer for the commission, said the commissioners told commissioners that the information for those groups and the commission were, quote, infused with either misinformation or lack of information, end close quote. The panel's general counsel, Julianne Pastula, agreed during the private meeting, saying, quote, you have advocacy people, and I respect their passion, I respect their lived experience, but what they're doing is advocating for the commission not to follow the law, and it's our job, as unpopular as it is, to try to keep you on track with the law and advise you as best as we can, end close quote. Commissioner Cynthia Orton, a Republican, told the panel many of the people commenting on the majority and minority districts had, quote, an agenda, end close quote. Orton said, quote, I think many of the many of the comments that we heard, while they were saying that it was a Voting Rights Act issue, it's a partisan issue, Orton said, continuing, and we need to be able to spot that and weed that out and not fall for that, end closed quote. The commission released 7 memos from the closed-door meeting. The commission also released recordings from that meeting as well, per the ruling from the Supreme Court. Although they advanced no new arguments, the memos give more insight into the advice given by the commission's attorneys regarding a range of issues, including the Voting Rights Act, population deviations, and the renumbering of new political districts. One of the memos is a 30-page history of racism and segregation in the state of Michigan. In another memo written by Adelson and discussed in the closed-door meeting, the attorney writes that the Voting Rights Act does not require the creation of any majority-minority districts, nor does it require the state to have a certain number of these districts. Quote, instead, the Supreme Court states that the VRA, Voting Rights Act, only requires that a compact and politically cohesive minority group, for example, black voters in Detroit, have the opportunity to elect their candidate of choice, not that these voters must live in majority black districts, end closed quote. From Adelson. The panel is expected to start voting on the adoption of the new state House, state Senate, and federal congressional maps on December 28th. That full article from Bridge, Michigan on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Other news making headlines across the state. An election official said Governor Whitmer did not break the law with big campaign checks and a chartered flight. This is from the Detroit Free Press and our good friend Dave Boucher. Governor Gretchen Whitmer's campaign did not violate state laws when it accepted contributions that would typically far exceed limits for when it paid for the governor to go on a chartered flight to see her father in Florida, state campaign finance officials ruled on Tuesday. The decisions clear the Whitmer campaign of formal wrongdoing on 2 hot-button political issues and are sure to inflame her GOP opponents. Quote, as with any complaint, the professional staff with Michigan's Bureau of Elections conducted a thorough analysis that included a review of all relevant laws, policies, and the facts presented, which resulted in the department concluding that there was no legal violation in either instance, said Jake Rollo, spokesman for the Michigan Department of State. However, the department determined that Whitmer came close to violating state law on the flight, and it suggested the department, quote, would like to revisit the decades-old policy regarding fundraising into a campaign committee during a recall effort, end closed quote. Here's where the recall campaign cash comes into play. Governor Whitmer's campaign received millions of dollars that normally would have exceeded state limits, but for a provision in state law that allows candidates facing a recall campaign to eschew this particular rule. Critics argue that the recall efforts were all but dormant and accused the governor of violating the spirit of the law. Whitmer's campaign did not deny receiving donations beyond traditional campaign finance limits, but rather said that recall efforts were active and therefore allowed her to raise additional funds. The department has never really dealt with this issue before, acknowledged Adam Fracassi of the state's Bureau of Elections. He says that while the department does not feel confident issuing a violation against the Whitmer campaign, it could do so if other candidates decide to take similar action in the future. Quote, although when applying existing precedent, there was not a basis to find violation regarding to existing complaints, the recall exception, as currently defined, does create the potential for abuse by allowing otherwise excess contributions to be used for what would otherwise amount to campaign advertising, end close quote, said Fracassi in a letter dismissing the complaint. Quote, although the record in this complaint does not show that the Whitmer Committee actually expended funds for that purpose, a future committee could, end closed quote. The Michigan Freedom Fund, a conservative advocacy group, filed the initial complaint about the recall contributions, and the statement executive director Tory Sachs blasted the state's department and accused the Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson of inappropriately aiding the governor. Quote, Gretchen Whitmer made the biggest illegal campaign cash grab in Michigan history, and Jocelyn Benson is laundering it for her so the millions in donations over the limit can be used for both of their re-election campaigns next year, end closed quote, said Sachs. She continued on, quote, Benson is encouraging partisans to file recalls in order to game the system and raise unlimited campaign funds. Cool. Continuing on, the Florida flight. Earlier this year, Governor Whitmer flew to Florida on a private jet to visit her father. She was widely criticized for the trip as it came during a time when the state largely discouraged travel due to COVID-19 concerns. Then in May, the Whitmer campaign announced that it would cover the costs of the flight. However, days later, Whitmer herself reimbursed her campaign for that expense to the tune of more than $20,000, according to campaign finance records. If she had not, she may have violated state campaign finance law, wrote Fracassi. Quote, if Governor Whitmer was not an elected official, she would have traveled to Florida, but presumably not on a chartered flight. Because Governor Whitmer would have incurred the cost of domestic airline tickets, even if she did not hold office, the cost of that ticket must be paid by Governor Whitmer personally, and Governor Whitmer bore the cost, Fracassi wrote in a memo dated on Tuesday. Quote, had Governor Whitmer not reimbursed the committee for the fair market value of commercial plane tickets, or had done so in response to news coverage for a complaint, there may have been reason to believe that a potential violation of state law had occurred. Further, had Governor Whitmer not promptly reimbursed the committee for the cost of the tickets upon learning of the expenditure, there may have been reason to believe that a potential violation of the state law had occurred, end closed quote. It was also said there was a miscommunication about payment for the flight, but that it was resolved. Quote, this complaint was another attempt by a right-wing dark money group to mislead voters, and we're glad to see the matter closed, said an official close to the governor. Quote, a miscommunication occurred when the flight company about the source with the flight company about the source of a payment, and once we were made aware of the issue, it was immediately corrected, and the flight was paid for in compliance with the Federal Aviation Administration's regulations and the Michigan Campaign Finance Law, end closed quote. Fracassi went on to determine the use of a chartered flight was allowed due to ongoing concerns for Governor Whitmer's safety. The governor's campaign team provided the Bureau with more than a dozen media reports of threats to the governor, along with dozens of vile and offensive social media messages directed toward the governor. But yeah, sure, this was all one big plot by the governor and the Secretary of State to dance around campaign finance laws. That doesn't seem like a ridiculous claim that you're trying to make because you didn't get your gotcha. So let's quit politicizing this and let those that are tasked with determining if this was a violation of law or not determine if this was a violation of law or not. Otherwise, making headlines on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Lastly, today, a petition effort is aiming to push Michigan's minimum wage to $15 an hour. However, that would be done by 2027, so not exactly an immediate solution. Under a petition initiative submitted to the Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's office on Tuesday. The Raise the Wage Michigan Ballot Committee's proposal would increase the minimum wage in $1 increments over 5 years, starting at $11 in January of 2023 and increasing to $15 by 2027. The initiative would also require automatic adjustments for inflation every year after 2027. It would end, quote, sub-minimum wage for tipped workers for people younger than 20 or for people with disabilities. The sub-minimum wage would be phased out in steps until it reached parity with the standard minimum wage, which would happen on January 1st of 2028. Quote, every time we put this on the ballot in Michigan, every time we collect signatures, this is the most popular issue that exists in the state, said Saru Jayaraman, One Fair Wage president and co-founder. Everybody overwhelmingly agrees people deserve to be paid a fair living wage when they work, and closed quote. The group said the pandemic and ongoing battles with customers bucking COVID-19 mandates have driven many people away from minimum wage jobs, but a wage increase at the close of the pandemic could lure them back into those positions. The group said it has about $500,000 in contributions set aside to launch the initiative and is confident it can gather the 340,047 signatures that is needed to obtain certification. In 2018, organizers gathered signatures to put a similar minimum wage increase on the ballot, but the Republican-led legislature instead adopted the proposal before it made it onto the ballot and amended it to slow its implementation. The legislature's changes would result in a minimum wage increase from $9.25 an hour to $12.05 an hour by 2030, slowing the initial proposed increase to $12 by 2022. The minimum wage for tipped restaurant workers will rise to $4.58 by 2030 in that scenario, instead of to $12 by 2024. The legislature's so-called quote-unquote adopt and amend strategy is currently wrapped up in litigation, but attorney Mark Brewer said that regardless of the outcome of adopt and amend, it is unlikely to affect current efforts. Quote, they would have to get the governor's signature on a bill to amend it and gut it, Brewer said, continuing, we do not believe the governor would be party to such a scheme to gut the minimum wage, and closed quote. The minimum wage petition joins an increasingly crowded initiative field, now one of 7 petition initiatives seeking a place on the 2022 ballot or adoption by the legislature. Other initiatives petition deals with prohibitions on public health orders, tightened voter ID laws, caps on short-term loan interest, tax-incentivized education scholarship programs, sentencing law changes, and a forensic audit of the 2020 election. So a real mixed bag of things good for society and just ridiculous. You can read that full article from the Detroit News on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We have a great show ahead of you today, a few minutes behind, so I apologize to our first guests, Theresa Wozniak Jenkins and Lisa Kirsch, both attorneys at law who are fighting to get children out of abusive homes. They will join us next on the show at 10:40. Dr. Elizabeth Bulat, the medical director of addiction medicine at Henry Ford Maplegrove Center, will join us at 11 o'clock. Santa himself will join us on the show at 11:20. The jolliest doctor in Oakland County, Dr. Jamie Taweel, an internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, will join us. And then we'll finish off the show at 11:40 with Chris Ward, the Parks Director of Oakland County Parks and Recreation. That's all coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, Let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect. We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe and healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe here in our studios in Oakland County, although we broadcast all throughout the state of Michigan on a number of different outlets. You can find more information about everywhere that we broadcast live to tape, and on demand by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com and clicking on our Megacast link. Each year, nearly 700,000 children are victims of abuse and neglect in the U.S., with about 2,000 of these cases resulting in death. Joining us now is an attorney who is fighting to keep children out of abusive homes. Theresa Wozniak Jenkins joins us on the Megacast. Theresa, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
So you are in the midst of starting a nonprofit law firm that will work to ensure that people who can't afford to litigate parental alienation cases, which are often expensive, are able to be represented by top lawyers. What was your motivation behind working to begin this nonprofit law firm?
So I wanted to be a lawyer since I was really young, and that motivation came from things that happened in my own household that were tragic, but it is the path that my soul chose. I know that now, and as a result, I went to law school, became a lawyer, and what became apparent to me is that we have a very broken family court system. And many, many children voices are not heard in this process. And many people who cannot afford to have their children seen by professionals or have their cases evaluated by the appropriate people, like clinical forensic psychologists, private investigators, all of these people that come into play that are necessary parts of these litigations. Most people can't even bat an eye at the expense of that. And that's a tragedy, because what happens is children get forgotten, they get pushed aside, and they get treated like they don't matter by the system that purports to be advocating for their best interests. So I decided a long time ago that I was going to do a nonprofit. I was going to form a nonprofit. And I recently had the opportunity to make that happen. And I'm very excited to be spearheading this.
So beginning the Justice Lawyer League, as you are calling it, it's aiming at helping kids that, and as you said, in a normal situation, given the way that our system currently works, would not be properly represented in cases where they're being abused or where they're being neglected, and often that would lead them into either continuing to be exposed to that abuse or to be continuously neglected. But that also brings the question of how would these kids then be able to approach or know to approach or be able to then get the services of such a nonprofit law group in that situation? Because I would think for them to be able to come forward or someone to recognize that, that's also a really tough thing to navigate when it comes to abuse of a child or neglect. So how is that? How do you plan on bridging that gap?
You raise an excellent point. Oftentimes, the way that cases come to people like me is through one of their parents. My law firm also handles cases of CPS and defense against CPS, and we also prosecute CPS for failing to do their due diligence and take care of children. So in part, we have to address first, reaching out to people who are currently in crisis, who have children who aren't being heard. Next, we have to do a public campaign. We have to make people know about this, and we have to let children know too. The good thing about just talking with people like you is it gets the word out. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not only trying to start this nonprofit, I'm trying to bring awareness to this huge gaping hole in our system that basically treats children like they're second class and that their voices don't matter. And even when there is forensic evidence that proves that they're being abused and the court doesn't pay attention, there are going to be people that stand up and fight for them and make sure that this stops with everything that they have.
We're joined by Theresa Wozniak Jenkins. She's an attorney and is fighting to get children out of abusive homes by beginning the Justice Lawyer League. And so you mentioned that often in these cases they're brought to attention by a parent of the child, despite the child being in an abusive or in a situation of neglect. Does that imply then, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in these cases it's a concerned parent that finally does raise concerns about the other parent in a two-parent situation that may be causing harm to their child and want to get their child and maybe even themselves the help that they need?
Absolutely. That's one aspect of it. I will tell you, I've had grandparents come to me when their son or daughter have passed and they notice abuse or neglect in the situation. I've had parents come to me in CPS cases when CPS is the person who, or excuse me, is the entity that is causing a child harm. One case in particular, I had a child who got hooked on drugs and pregnant while in a foster care situation being withheld from her mother. So these are the types of situations that I'm talking about. It's not just child custody and parental alienation and abuse and neglect cases. It's any case where children are being harmed and the justice system is ignoring them. I am going to handle all aspects of those cases, and the Justice Lawyer League is going to band together and make sure that we have an impact across the nation in helping these kids get out of these situations or the remedy that they need in the situation that they're in.
So often these situations do turn into a custody battle, whether they're putting the child into the foster care system while they're deliberating the legitimacy of the ability of the parent or of the parents to raise the child, or if they're trying, or if there's a battle between one parent or another to claim full custody due to abuse or neglect as a result of the actions of another parent. But these often come into become really complicated situations and really expensive situations too, particularly on the legal side, just to prove that a parent should have legitimate custody of their child, especially if they are, for lack of better terms, a good parent. Why is that the case? What causes that in our current system? What flaw in our current system or flaws causes this process to be, frankly, convoluted and creating a disadvantage for good parents and for keeping children with their parents and out of further situations where they could be neglected or abused or both?
In my experience in this state, because I've practiced law in other states as well, we have a huge problem in our judiciary. While we have legislation that says that we're supposed to have a dedicated family court, many counties don't have the resources to have a dedicated family court bench. We also have a system where judges are elected politicians. And instead of hiring the best and the brightest to be on the family court bench, we unfortunately have people that are elected who've never handled a family court case, who never know about the complexities of child abuse or parental alienation. And so highly manipulative parents or grandparents or entities that have a vested interest in keeping a child out of a loving, caring parent's home because of the strategy, finances, or abilities of another person, that makes it impossible to get past somebody who doesn't have the expertise, who doesn't have the finances to get somebody with the expertise to actually talk to the children and figure out what's going on. Our system is wrought with injustice by the level of bureaucracy that exists. Do you know how much money it costs for people just to get to an evidentiary hearing? That's just to hear the witnesses, just to hear the people talk about what's really going on. There are so many hearings and there's so many steps in that process where it's just the lawyers talking. It's not actually looking at the evidence. And that is a huge flaw in our system. We need to get evidence in front of these judges. We need to get those things taken care of where they can actually see and digest and get the continuing legal education courses that they need in order to do that.
And so with that being the case, how does a group like yours, like the Justice Lawyer League, that's providing the support that's often so expensive and so out of reach for so many children and so many parents and children together that are dealing with these cases of abuse and or neglect, how does that help to, and maybe not fully resolve the issue, but to mitigate the issue despite the inherent flaws that are in Michigan's systems?
Getting people the resources in these high conflict cases where there is abuse going on, because things like parental alienation are abuse of children. It is a mental and emotional type of abuse that is long-term impacts and huge mental health consequences for children. And so there are factors that highly trained professionals and lawyers who handle these types of cases can instantaneously figure out that this is one of those high conflict cases. We need to designate these high conflict cases as such. We need to have a lot of oversight. We need to have trained guardian ad litems and lawyer guardian ad litems who are interested in listening to their wards and not the parents who are trying to manipulate them and get them on their sides. We need to have a way by which we figure out the cases where one parent is trying to pit the other against the system as a whole or the child and cut that parent out versus people who just don't know how to navigate the process of dividing custody, dividing their assets and their lives in an amicable way that doesn't impact the children in a negative way. Those people exist. This is a highly complex level of litigation in any aspect when you're dealing with child custody where people can't get along. Sometimes it's lack of education. Sometimes it's mental health issues. Sometimes it's outright abuse. And we need to be able to differentiate the two. And we need judges and legal professionals who can do it like this, who do not demand tens of thousands of dollars in resources from parties up front.
We're joined by Theresa Wozniak Jenkins. She is the founder of the Justice Lawyer League, joining us on the Megacast. And so, Theresa, what impact does the holiday season typically have on situations of abuse and neglect? Do we typically see an increase in these cases or an increase in severity in existing cases during this season?
Absolutely. It's it's somewhat known in the family court system that you see a big divide. You see some people trying to reconcile or get better at co-parenting or say, family really matters and we're going to try to do better for our kids. Even if we're not going to stay together, even if we're not going to get along as adults, we're going to try harder. And we see some distance from the system. Other times we see children who are trapped long-term in situations that are abusive because the system wants children to be forced into family situations over the holidays. Or we have parents who are trapped in those situations. Resources are limited. You're focusing your money on things that are important for family and loved ones over the holidays. So you can't divert your resources to litigating and protecting your children when they're already as limited as they are to begin with. Our economy and everything is struggling right now. People are struggling right now. And unfortunately, we have a system where people take that out on the people that they're supposed to love the most. And that level of stress is evident in our system today.
So if someone in a family where one of the spouses is abusive to the children, or to both a child and another member of the family, or in a situation where a child is being abused or neglected in either they themselves or someone else in their life, a grandparent, a neighbor, a friend, a teacher, whatever the case may be, recognizes that, what are the first steps that they should take to be able to provide the best care to that child and help them get out of that situation, or even the child and a member of their family that may be in that terrible situation?
Absolutely. So most communities, most counties have resources for domestic violence victims and victims of ongoing domestic violence. So if you're a family member or a loved one of somebody who you know is being abused, if you know that that person is not in immediate threat of harm, you need to call those local resources. So like in Livingston County, for example, you have La Casa, and they have mental health professionals, housing, resources to help people get out of those situations. If there is an immediate threat of irreparable injury and you know your loved one is in harm's way, call law enforcement. Law enforcement are highly trained in detecting these types of cases and getting the evidence that you would need to get out or get that person out and put them under arrest in order to facilitate the process of you leaving and getting safe, or getting your loved one out of that situation and getting the child safe. Also, contacting CPS. While I unfortunately have seen many times where CPS has turned a blind eye to actual abuse, there are still many good people in that organization, and it is worth trying. It is worth reporting. It is worth reporting multiple times if you know abuse is going on to children.
And so then, Theresa, once it's been reported, once that process has started, how should they go about getting in contact with you or someone else in the Justice Lawyer League, especially if they need this representation and they're like most people, they're not able to immediately afford to make all those ridiculous payments that they have to make to a team of lawyers or to a team of different systems just to move their case along at a respectable pace?
Absolutely. Most law firms that do any sort of divorce or custody litigation have an intake process. A lot of lawyers do offer free consultations. And so take those opportunities to get those free consultations. If not, then you can call the Michigan Bar Association. They have referral services to pro bono or low bono, meaning reduced rate fees for people who can help. The Lawyer Justice League is still pending its 501c3 status, so I want to get going as soon as that status is complete. But right now, we are one step behind being able to run. Hopefully on the new year, we will be ready to fully take on cases and represent people within the capacity of the league. But we will start out by helping other lawyers who need resources. So for example, cases where people have already spent $10,000, they don't have the money to hire a forensic clinician to do the custody eval, to find out if parental alienation is going on. They can contact the Justice Lawyer League. We can vet if that's an appropriate case for that. And then the league can help finance that forensic professional, that forensic psychologist coming in and doing the evaluation that's so necessary to get that case moving forward and getting those children out of that situation.
Theresa, if other attorneys in this area of practicing law want to help out, want to help your organization and help these children, help these families through these horrible situations, how can they best get in contact with you?
My office phone number is that's my old number. My office phone number is 248-792-8255. 3060. I am presently with the Kirst-Daskis Law Group, but I am joining forces with Lisa Kirst-Ottawa. She is the lead litigator and owner of that firm, and we eventually will become Kirst-Daskis Wozniak Jenkins. So that is the best way to reach us right now. You can also reach me at Theresa, Theresa, at K as in kite, D as in dog, lawgroup.com.
That is Theresa at kdlawgroup.com. And Theresa with the TH, Theresa at kdlawgroup.com. Theresa, thank you very much for joining us.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will shift gears and talk about the climbing rates of alcohol use in women, especially moms, during the pandemic with addiction specialist, the medical director of addiction medicine over at Henry Ford Maplegrove Center, Dr. Elizabeth Bulat, who joins us next on the Megacast.
Did you know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe, here in our studios in West Bloomfield Township, although we broadcast all throughout Oakland County and around the state of Michigan on many different community television and community radio outlets, as well as online on civiccentertv.com, as well as on My Michigan TV. You can learn more information about every that we broadcast live to tape, and find us on demand by going to civiccentertv.com and clicking on our Megacast link. Joining us now from Henry Ford Maplegrove Center is their medical director of addiction medicine, Dr. Elizabeth Bulat. Joining us on the Megacast. Doctor, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. So during the pandemic, we've seen a rise in alcohol use, and we've seen a rise also in alcohol abuse as well. And it's particularly, these numbers have been staggering among women, especially moms. Just how much of a change from pre-pandemic to during pandemic and in the present right now have those instances changed?
Yeah, so I think traditionally we've seen usage in both male and females. I think what we've noticed, it's become more apparent, and women are seeking treatment for alcohol use disorder. Pre-pandemic, typically we would see alcohol usage higher on the end with male consumption. Really what COVID did is it caused a lot of isolation, anxiety, stress, unknown circumstances, financial stressors. I think where women were impacted was a lot of women that were at home with children, homeschooling sort of turned to that as a coping mechanism. And there's been some studies quoting up to 300% increase in women drinking alcohol. So there's one piece of it, which is the increased consumption, and the other is whether there's an actual, we would call an alcohol use disorder. But either way, it's staggering the numbers.
And so why has there, to your knowledge and to other experts in medicine that are focusing on addiction medicine in particular, why do you believe that there's been this increase during the pandemic in alcohol use and misuse, particularly among these women who are moms, but really in women in general?
Yeah. So, and it could be men as well. I think the person that stays at home, so I think traditionally there's been the sort of role with women. We've seen, COVID provided a lot of unknown and anxiety. And if somebody already has a tendency to be depressed or anxious and did not have proper treatment, as well as if someone's, struggling with insomnia, COVID brought a lot of everybody sort of felt unsure. And I think it became a coping mechanism. In terms of the homeschooling or people being at home more often, this also happened for people working remotely. We saw an increased usage. Isolation is the worst thing for addiction. And what did COVID do for everybody? It isolated everybody. So if you're already prone to isolating and using substances and using them as a coping mechanism, so in this case, women are at home all day, let's say homeschooling children by themselves, there's no accountability. So suddenly my one glass of wine at night has become a glass in the morning, maybe a glass with lunch, and you can see how that can escalate. Really, a lot of it is coping mechanisms were, an opportunity here, and I think that's where the alcohol turned.
So just for reference, doctor, what is a healthy amount of alcohol consumption, both for women and for others, just that we have this reference to go off of as we approach consideration of the increased use of alcohol during the pandemic?
Yeah, so, with women and men, there's different criteria. And then with people over the age of 65, it also follows the same criteria as women. But, 7 drinks a week or 14 for men. And that would be also 7 for somebody that's 65 and older. And then more than 3 drinks in one setting would be considered excessive. So there is moderate use. And there are people that can drink alcohol and that don't have a problem. What happened with COVID was the perfect storm. Again, there was a lot of depression, anxiety, self-medicating, isolation. I think the people that really struggled the most were those that were sort of escalating with their addiction, which is a progressive disease. I think what I found is people that were already in recovery actually did quite well. There's always challenges, but I think that in some ways, it could have helped people that were already sober. I think the people that were struggling, it made it much harder. Also, a lot of facilities were closed or in less capacity. So access to treatment was even an issue.
So, and as we talk about access to treatment, how does access to alcohol, to purchasing of alcohol, unlike other substances that are so often abused, how does that play a factor, especially during the pandemic, in the increase in these numbers?
Yeah. Well, with, delivery apps, which many of us use for groceries and, and for food, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, alcohol is also something that can be delivered. And I think access to that would be basically nonstop. And, we live in a state where there's alcohol pretty much on every corner at every, convenience store. It's pretty accessible. So while other drugs of abuse can be attainable, certainly alcohol is much easier. And so for somebody who has an alcohol use disorder, it definitely makes it more challenging. So access is definitely much easier, and it became much easier during this time.
And so what are some of the what are some of the physical or the mental health issues that might arise in someone that has increased their use of alcohol, or maybe abusing or misusing alcohol?
Yeah, so we have what we would kind of call safe or moderate drinking, or people that do not have an alcohol use disorder. I want to make it kind of clear that if somebody does have an addiction, they can't drink at all. So there's not, I can have one or two. So it's sort of, zero or nothing. So in terms of kind of the effects, if you're a binge drinker, so somebody who typically drinks heavily on the weekends, that actually is pretty detrimental to the body as well. We look at liver, heart, these things can get escalate high blood pressure, high cholesterol, something called alcoholic hepatitis, which is inflammation of the liver. Of course, on the mental health side of things, other than the intoxication dangers, which can be deadly, there's also, respiratory depression, which is slow breathing, kind of ataxia when people are kind of not able to walk, in a straight line. But the higher your blood alcohol, it really can be deadly. And for folks that drink daily and have physiological dependence, this is something now that if you want to stop, it's dangerous. And that's another important thing. We always think of alcohol as sort of this legal, and it's not so dangerous, but alcohol withdrawal is one of the most deadly things that substances you can come off of. So seizures, withdrawal in itself causes kind of your body to go into overdrive. So if somebody has underlying health issues, I think also can cause anxiety, insomnia, depression. So mental health and physical health can be affected whether you're drinking daily or heavy binge drinking, but definitely we know that it's not good for the body.
We're joined by Dr. Elizabeth Bulat from Henry Ford Maplegrove Center. She's their medical director of addiction medicine with us today on the Megacast. And so you mentioned the impact that isolation has had on the increased use and misuse of alcohol during the pandemic at this time of the year, and given the circumstances we're currently under regarding COVID-19, we're expecting to see more families get back to gathering together, groups of friends gathering together, whatever the case may be, for the Christmas holiday later on this week, for the New Year holiday next week as well. And so that would mean that in many of these cases, I would presume those that have been increasing their use of alcohol have been misusing or abusing alcohol during the pandemic while they've been in those situations of isolation. They're going to be more visible with other people in their lives. What signs should people be looking out for in their friends and their family and other loved ones or acquaintances during this time of the year that may point to signs that they may be misusing or abusing alcohol?
Yeah, sure. No, it's a good point. I think, the isolation will be less during this time. And, we are in a very unique time with COVID and really have to be mindful of that as well with gathering. But, in terms of the alcohol, it's typically going to be, somebody that has changed their behavior. They may become, maybe more anxious, trying to isolate, trying to sort of sneak away. Really continued use despite negative consequences is sort of the biggest red flag. But if somebody's starting to, spend less time with the family or not show up to work or not fulfill their household duties, in terms of engaging with somebody, you may notice that physically they look different. Alcohol can do quite a bit on the body, whether it's, again, daily or binge drinking. If you notice bruises on their body, if it's somebody that may be falling from being intoxicated, especially we see this with elderly patients. So these are kind of all of things that we can start to see. Of course, tolerance. So if you see somebody that suddenly can drink quite a bit, and before you knew them as somebody that wasn't able to drink very much, we call that tolerance. That could be a sign of drinking more. So these are all sort of, erratic behavior, anxiety, things that can kind of be a good first step. I think the most important thing is that if, there is something that's identifiable, or if you have a concern about a family member, is just to really have a non-judgmental, open-ended conversation with them. This is a really hard time for everybody. It's been a long, year and a half for all of us. And I think, there's such a stigma with this, and there's a lot of shame and guilt. And so I think just having an open approach and really supporting people, family, addiction is a family disease, and so family support is really key, and I think that's one of the most important things.
We're joined by Dr. Elizabeth Bulat. She is the Medical Director of Addiction Medicine at Henry Ford Maplegrove Center with us on the Megacast. And so we talked about recognizing those signs in a loved one or in someone else in your life and addressing those issues. For someone that may themselves personally recognize that their alcohol intake has been abnormal, has been out of the ordinary, has escalated to a point that is at the point of misuse or abuse, and they want to seek treatment or they want to discontinue their alcohol use or abuse, what should they do in terms of seeking treatment? Because as you said, alcohol withdrawal from just straight cutting off all access to alcohol can be very dangerous. So what steps should they be taking?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is this somebody who's already developed what we would say an addiction or alcohol use disorder, or is this somebody that said, I've noticed I've been, hungover more, I'm calling into work. So I think the person that is physiologically dependent, so they drink every day, that is someone that should be under medical supervision. So I just really, the message is that, it can be very dangerous. And a lot of folks don't know that. And unfortunately, they end up having seizures and end up in the hospital. And so that's the challenge when you're finally ready to quit, you need help to do it. So for those folks, I would say, if you're not feeling well, always go to the emergency room. In terms of kind of first steps, talking to your primary care doctor is a good start. Typically, the conversation about, usages may have already occurred, but I think that's usually a good step. The primary care can then refer to addiction treatment if needed. The back of the insurance card as a substance abuse kind of number that can help people get access to treatment. For folks that are still sort of, maybe don't have an alcohol use disorder, but they're at risk for one, I think that's the time to really stay connected to your support. With COVID and the isolation, a lot of people got disconnected. And, as human beings, we enjoy having interaction. And a lot of that became isolating, especially for people like working from home or staying home and homeschooling, so there was really no interaction with other people. And so a lot of it just became, again, more isolative. So I think staying connected to support. The nice thing is, there's virtual FaceTime and things like that to be able to stay connected. Finding new coping mechanisms. I think that's a new one. I think a lot of folks that used to do, group things now kind of had to reinvent. So an example would be exercising, taking walks, etc. So these are the couple few things. And in terms of support, Alcoholics Anonymous or AA does have virtual meetings, which has been really a lifesaver for many people. And so, one kind of silver lining out of all of this has been a lot of access to virtual care, which I think really has been helpful for people.
We're joined by Dr. Elizabeth Bulat. She is the Medical Director for Addiction Medicine at Henry Ford Maplegrove Center, joining us on the Megacast. And Doctor, we know the impact that the pandemic has had on alcohol intake, on alcohol use and misuse and abuse. What impact does the holidays typically have on those factors?
Yeah, it's definitely a time of vulnerability. If we sort of cut COVID out of the picture, I think for most people, it can be a very joyous, time. I think for others, it can be very stressful, especially if there's financial worries about presents and kind of making, the holidays special. I also have a lot of patients that unfortunately have lost loved ones during this pandemic. And so this is their first holiday without, maybe a family member or spouse. And so really we have to be mindful of how other people are going through things that we may not be aware of. But, the holidays can be a challenge. I think if somebody is in recovery, a lot of times people have very transparent conversations. The family knows the person's in recovery and they're supportive of that. And so they might have a dry, holiday party where there's no alcohol. But I've also had some patients who, want to be able to have their family participate, but they have a safety plan where they go with somebody, that's supportive. And then if there's a point where they feel uncomfortable, they're able to leave. So I think in the beginning of recovery, we like to avoid these situations. But again, with the holidays, we have to do what's reasonable.
Doctor, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. Before we let you go, I want to give you another couple minutes in case there's anything that we haven't talked about today that people should be keeping in mind regarding alcohol use and misuse during the pandemic, or any other topics that you'd like to discuss.
Yeah, no, I think just, again, if someone is struggling or a family member is struggling, there is help available, whether it's in person, if somebody's afraid, because of the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of virtual care options. And I think there's also a lot of medications that can help people, which many people don't know about, in terms of cravings or managing the sleep issues and anxiety, so that someone doesn't feel like they have to turn to alcohol.
Doctor, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.
We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we'll start the second hour of the Megacast on your radio homes for the show, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. We'll kick off the second hour of the show, getting into the holiday spirit, and we'll be joined by the one, the only Santa Claus next on the Megacast.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM. It's not often that we have an interview on this show that applies not only to us here in the area of our flagship stations here in the greater West Bloomfield area, not only here in Oakland County, not only in the state of Michigan, but not only all around the U.S., but all around the world. But we're going to break a little bit of our protocol here, because this is a very important guest we have here with us, and he's very busy, so we want to get right into it. We are joined now by the Santa Claus on the Megacast. Santa, thank you for being with us again.
Thank you for having me. Great to be back.
Yeah, great to have you back. It's, of course, been a year since we last spoke to you before last Christmas during a very challenging year, but we're back again, just 11 days away at this point, a little bit over 10 days. What do the final preparations look like for you and your team getting ready for the big day?
Well, from the outside, looking in, probably looks pretty hectic. It's more of a controlled chaos right now. Everybody's got a job to do. The elves all are working very hard. We've got elves, caring for the reindeer. We got elves, finishing up the toys and wrapping the presents, preparing the sleigh for flight. Mrs. Claus she's got a check off list and making sure that everything gets done and making sure that I've got everything I need before we take off.
So you're checking your list twice. She's also checking it. So plenty of checking.
Checking my list and her list, yes.
Absolutely. And so for you, Santa, what inspired you to go into this line of work? I mean, everybody's got that dream job, and yours was to be the greatest gift giver in the history of humankind. What inspired you to do it?
I think I was born to be Santa. I mean, I love children. I've always enjoyed giving to and caring for others, and I think I'm just a natural for it. I look the part, and I know it's not you're never gonna get rich being a Santa Claus, but just seeing the faces on the little boys and girls and listening to all their stories and about all the things they love about Christmas, it's priceless, absolutely priceless. And Santa Claus never gets old to children either, because I'm only a public figure for 2 months a year, and and then I'm on my merry way, so nobody gets tired of it. Best time of the year, from as the story goes.
Hey, you know what? Everyone's really happy to get their 15 minutes of fame. You get 1 month in every single year that is all about you, Santa Claus, who's joining us right now on the Megacast. And so, as we've gone through time, technology has continued to aid us in all areas of life, including in transportation, but you stick to the classics. Just you and your reindeer traveling the world to every single house, every single place of living, every single place you can go to drop off gifts to all the good boys and girls all across the world. What keeps you sticking with the classic approach instead of using all this technology that we're all using to get around here?
Well, as you know, I live in a community of elves, and all the elves have a very specific job. Among the most important jobs, certainly the toy makers, but right up there with them are the map makers, the cartographers. What they do is they map out a route for us. They calculate time and distance, and very often one will travel with me to navigate the sleigh. So it works out great. Never had a problem.
So everybody's wondering this time of year, especially the boys and girls that are trying to make those last preparations to make sure that they end up on the nice list and not on the naughty list. So from the source exactly, what are those qualifications that get kids onto the nice list, and what are those disqualities that get them onto the naughty list, Santa?
Well, originally the placement on the naughty or nice list was based on behavior throughout the year, throughout the entire year. Well, I can tell you that for a good long while, there were a lot of boys and girls who ended up with lumps of coal in their stocking instead of presents because of that. These days, children don't hear about Santa Claus very often until about 2 weeks before Christmas, and at that time it's, Jimmy, Santa Claus is watching you, and if you don't stop swinging off the chandeliers, you're not going to get anything for Christmas this year. Well, Jimmy gets his mind right pretty quick, and you got two weeks of great behavior. But the 50 weeks leading up to that may have had a little more questionable behavior. I think parents, if they were to remind their children throughout the year that Santa Claus is watching, and he knows when you've been good and he knows when you've been nice, so be good, for goodness sake. I think things will work out a little better.
Exactly, but for some kids, as they're getting toward the holiday, and as you said, a lot of people, they're not really thinking about Santa Claus until a couple weeks before Christmas. So if they're kind of straddling the line between the naughty list and the nice list, when is that determination made? Which list they're on, and whether they're getting those gifts that they've been hoping for all year long, or they're getting a lump of coal on Christmas?
Well, like I said, right now you can go almost up to the 11th hour, and if you get real close and you're doing your very best at the end, because maybe you don't get those reminders, like I said, then if you can give it your best shot, and your behavior is pretty good without going too far overboard, then you're going to end up on the nice list. The nice list is very, very long. The naughty list is generally very short, not that many on it. The kids tend to get it together when they need to, and they step right up to the plate. So the nice list is always very long.
So as you're traveling across the world this Christmas and every Christmas season, you're hearing all the people out singing Christmas songs, caroling in their communities leading up to the holiday. I'm sure you're hearing all about that from your elves on shelves all across the world. But other than Christmas music, what music do you like to listen to, Santa?
Well, I like all the Christmas music, of course, from the classics, Silent Night and the Little Drummer Boy. And even some of the, the newer, the little toe tappers, up on the rooftop, and Run, Run, Rudolph, and Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. Those are all great. Those are all very cool. But I guess off season, if I'm not listening to Christmas music, I'm good with. I like all kinds of music from the oldies all the way to some of the music that's even played today, as long as I can understand the lyrics.
Well, other than you on your team, of course, you and Mrs. Claus are big stars this Christmas season, as you are every Christmas season. But another big star is Rudolph, one of your reindeer, and of course, he's become a big star over the many years. Is he staying humble, and are the other reindeer ever jealous about all the attention that Rudolph gets this time of year?
That's a good question. Rudolph is pretty level-headed. He really is. Now, he's taken some heat from some of the other reindeer over the course of the years. He was not one of Santa's original 8 tiny reindeer. He earned his chops in one stormy, blizzardy night, lighting the way with that shiny nose of his. And he didn't even have to pull; he just led the way. And I suppose that was all it took for him. And on he went. The story continues.
So all around the world, Santa, families are leaving cookies and milk out for you on their counter as you're traveling around delivering their gifts. As you go house to house, home to home, city to city, country to country, what are your favorite cookies to consume as you're dropping off gifts all around the world?
Well, I tell you, I could eat cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if Mrs. Claus would allow me to. But she says, Santa Claus, if you eat as many cookies as you want, there's no magic in the world that's going to fit you down a chimney when the time comes. So she keeps me on a little bit of a diet most of the year. But when I start dropping down chimneys, if I find one of those cutout cookies with some icing and the sprinkles on top, that's a nice cookie. And I can eat a load of those without ever filling up. So that's a pretty good cookie. But some moms are very busy these days and they can't get out and get in the kitchen and make those cookies. So grocery stores got great cookies. I mean, you can't beat a Chips Ahoy or a couple of those double stuffed golden Oreos. Can't go wrong there.
Now, I would reintroduce our guest, but he speaks for himself. Is Santa Claus with us on the Megacast today? And you mentioned Mrs. Claus, the greatest Christmas gift Santa has ever received. And I just want to ask, how did you two crazy kids meet?
Well, we live in a community of elves, and many, many years ago. There's so many I won't tell you because I wouldn't want to put Mrs. Claus on a spot for her age, but or my age for that matter. But probably a little community event, a little sock hop we got together, and we locked eyes, and I knew I was hooked, and I figured we'll end up 2 peas in a pod one day. It took me a little while to convince her of that, but she finally came around.
Well, that of course is a great love story that has persisted throughout the years, Santa, you and Mrs. Claus. So when you're out delivering gifts, what's she doing back at the North Pole?
Well, believe it or not, Mrs. Claus used to, just a very few times when we got started together, she used to make the trip with me. Oh. We get on that sleigh and off we go. It didn't work out that well. She really didn't like it. It came down to, well, you're going too fast, Santa, or I'm freezing out here, or, I think you missed a turn. And so she wasn't real happy with the flight. So these days she stays back and supervises the elves and takes care of things back in the North Pole and waits for me to get back.
So it's a long preparation season, of course, for this huge operation of yours all across the world, delivering gifts to everybody on Christmas Eve in time for their Christmas holiday. When it's all over, what do you do to unwind? Do you have a favorite vacation, a vacation spot, any activities you get into right after Christmas?
That's a good question, too. Mrs. Claus and I always travel down. We go down south to a community way down south in the States, as a matter of fact. And it's an older community, a lot of men and women look very much like us, some silver-haired ladies, and a lot of gentlemen with white hair and long beards just like me. So we blend right in. We have a lot of fun for a couple of weeks before we get back to work again.
We're joined by jolly old Saint Nick himself, Santa Claus, on the Megacast today. Santa, anyone who has ever had a job interview is familiar with this question, so I'll ask it to you as well. This is not a job interview. We're just having a casual conversation between friends, of course. But where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, if I'm not Santa Claus and out of the North Pole, I'll be very disappointed. 5 years and 10 years, as many years as I can be Santa, that's where I see myself. There's no better job for me.
We're joined by Santa Claus on the Megacast. Just another few minutes with you, Santa, before we let you go. Countless children and families are watching you today here on the Megacast. And so for them, as we are just 11 days away at this point, that we're recording this interview and that we're broadcasting it live from the Christmas holiday, any lasting messages for children and for families out there as we're approaching Christmas?
Well, to the children, as always, be good, listen to your parents, do well in school as well as you can in school, and get outside and have some fun.
Well, Santa, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us during this very busy time of the year for you. So we'll let you go and get back to Mrs. Claus, to the elves, and your last-minute preparation for the Christmas holiday. Thank you very much, Santa.
Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. We'll see him on Christmas Eve traveling all around the world, and then we'll see everything that he delivers to all the good boys and girls all across the world on December 25th on Christmas Day. Big thank you to Santa.
The county.
Or the Huron River Watershed Council.
We work together to protect water resources for everyone.
Most of the pollution entering our rivers is carried by rainwater that runs off roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
A rain garden helps catch stormwater runoff.
Rain gardens and their plants help dirty runoff soak into the ground.
You can do your part to help keep our water clean.
Learn about rain gardens and native plants.
So consider a rain garden in your home landscaping.
Catch the runoff with a rain garden.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
I couldn't breathe at all. There was lots of talk about putting me on a ventilator. I thought I was gonna die. I was 39 weeks pregnant and had a scheduled C-section. During that time, I got COVID and was hospitalized for a month. I had a blood clot in my lungs. It caused me to go into right-sided heart failure. I was really scared. I kept texting my husband and my mom, telling them how scared I was, and I was worried that he was gonna grow up without a mom. And then I was worried if, when I did get home, that he wouldn't know who I was. You know, being 27 and a mom and a wife and having that all almost taken away from me. It's scary, and if a vaccine can prevent that from happening, why not? Get your vaccine. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you.
Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation.
Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime-victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council.
As partners, working together to protect our water resources, we agree.
Pet waste is a source of harmful bacteria in the Huron River.
When it's left on the ground, it can wash into the storm drains.
These lead directly to our streams. No filters, no treatment.
Here's one thing we know that can help keep our water clean.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
So pick up pet waste and trash it.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe here in our studio in West Bloomfield, although we're broadcasting all throughout the Great Lakes State on a number of different outlets. You can find everywhere we broadcast live to tape, and on demand by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now is Dr. Jamie Taweel, an internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, with us on the Megacast. Dr. Taweel, thank you for being with us again.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Appreciate it. So right now, the new variant that's been popping up across the world and has begun to take stride here in the U.S. Is the Omicron variant. It differs in some ways from the Delta variant, which had previously been the dominant strain. It's expected that the Omicron variant sometime early in the new year will become the dominant strain here in the U.S. What are some of those key differences, to your knowledge, between those two variants that people should be keeping cautious of, because both of these are continuing to go around here in the state of Michigan?
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more dominant, as we're seeing, much more easily spread, much more, available, for lack of a better word. It's definitely getting there. People that have been vaccinated have also been getting infected with it, but those that have been vaccinated are having less of a effect. They're having less of a dangerous amount of symptoms. Their hospitalizations on those that have been vaccinated has been reduced, but it is pretty virulent. It's been out there, and it's starting to spread pretty wildly. So.
And so among your patients, are you seeing an uptick in cases of COVID-19, or have you as of late? And if so, are these seeming to be more asymptomatic cases where they're contacting you, or people that are having symptoms and want to seek the advice of their primary care provider?
So I am getting a lot more, actually. It's been pretty wild. There's been a lot more positive cases than I thought I would be seeing at this stage in the game. But it is out there, and there are a lot of people that have been getting it, even those that have been vaccinated. And I'm not suggesting the vaccine is worthless by any means. I will tell you that the majority of my patients that have been vaccinated have a much milder form of this case. Patients that have been getting it have been getting pretty sick that have not been vaccinated. I do have friends that are in the hospital telling me that this is getting pretty wild in terms of just the amount of people. The volume has been significantly increased. I will tell you that friends of mine that are emergency room physicians have told me that this is getting just as busy, if not busier, than when it first started. And the majority of the patients that are getting admitted are those that have been unvaccinated, unfortunately.
And so for you as a primary care physician, differently from those that are working on front lines in the hospital systems, as those hospital systems continue to be more inundated with COVID-19 cases and are seeing that their capacity is reaching a breaking point despite the additional supports that are being provided from the state and from the federal government, how does that affect then primary care physicians in their role in the in battling this pandemic, being that maybe some of their patients then would be less likely to either be admitted into a hospital if this escalates any further, or would need to seek other treatments?
So it's tough because what we're doing for outpatients that are positive, obviously we're trying to isolate them. We're trying to not have them come to the office if we can avoid that. We're trying to, definitely we're doing diagnosing. We're still doing our swabs in the parking lot to avoid contamination. It's been pretty rough in that regard. Find myself arranging for a lot of oxygen therapy for a lot of patients that are having difficulty breathing. The majority of the cases that I'm seeing are people that have been discharged from the hospital that are following up with me for aftercare, as well as patients before they, God forbid, have to go to the hospital to set them up for, monoclonal antibody treatments if they qualify. So we have to basically screen to make sure that they're okay, that they qualify for that treatment, and then sending them to the appropriate facilities to get those infusions. So we've been pretty busy. It's been quite a year already.
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, with us on the Megacast. And so as we continue to hear that the vast majority of those that are being admitted to hospitals and are needing to seek additional care, long-term care there at the hospital due to COVID-19, the majority of those cases has been among the unvaccinated. For some who have been, and many who have been vaccinated at this point are pro-vaccination on the COVID-19 front, may be wondering at this point if it's even possible to convince people that have been unwilling as of yet to get vaccinated to do so. In your experience with patients of yours that have been reluctant or have refused previously to get vaccinated, but eventually have had a change of heart or a change of opinion, what in your experience has been what has brought them along to a point where they were ready to get the vaccination?
So, I continue to hear the same arguments for people that do not want to have the vaccine. The one that we always heard at the beginning was, well, I think it's a little too early. I want to wait this out and see what the vaccine does and see if it has any benefits, to that effect. And quite frankly, it's been over a year now, and the vaccine's been out, and I hear a lot of anecdotal evidence. A lot of anecdotal patients are always telling me, well, I know someone who had the vaccine and this happened. But as far as my practice is concerned, I've literally seen one case of someone who had an adverse reaction to the vaccine. And when I say adverse, I mean something other than the typical things you get whenever you get a vaccine. People do feel achy. People do feel a little bit fatigued. People do have some pain at the injection site. That's a local reaction. They do have some lymph nodes, but that's all going to go away. Patients that I know that have had I have one patient that had a blood clot as a result of the vaccine. We were unable to find any other reason that she got a blood clot almost immediately after receiving the vaccine. So, but other than that, time has basically proven its case where the vaccine is essentially safe for a lot of people and should be encouraged. The other things that I'm hearing, excuse me, are patients that are concerned with regards to the vaccine. I've already had COVID. Should I still get the vaccine? I should have the antibodies. And my response is absolutely. I think that even if you had COVID, you can get it more than once. I've had patients that have gotten COVID more than once. The vaccine does help even if you've had COVID previously. I often point to the example of the shingles vaccine. Shingles is a vaccine to prevent you from getting shingles. It is a vaccine against the varicella zoster virus, which is common for chickenpox. Patients have had chickenpox, still get shingles. However, the vaccine works for them. So I do encourage people to get the vaccine even if they've had COVID. It's tough if you haven't had it by now, and most people are on the fence. They've already gone one way or the other, and I don't see too many people getting converted to vaccine believers. I would wish that they do. I try not to be a bully with people. I don't like to harass people, but ultimately, I'm there to explain the benefits of the vaccine. It does not prevent you from getting COVID. It prevents you from dying of COVID. It prevents a lot of hospitalizations. It does improve things. Again, I'm not seeing too many people that are suddenly on board with vaccines, and hopefully we can convince them somehow to get that taken care of.
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel, an internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates on the Megacast. And Dr. Taweel, recently we had a man named Ian Kohler who a year ago was diagnosed with testicular cancer and battled that, and as well as renal cancer over the past year. And the saddest part of his story was that he had said he had painful symptoms in his groin area for about 3 to 4 years before he ultimately got checked for testicular cancer and then eventually was diagnosed pretty quickly after his initial test. But it took him a while because of embarrassment with the pain he was having, with him being 29 years old at the time of his diagnosis and still having that feeling of invincibility. How often do primary care physicians, when they're doing a physical, when they're consulting with their patients, male or female, check for these common forms of cancer, or how often should patients at least be asking for these checks to be done by their primary care physician or another medical official?
Excellent question. My heart goes out to that guy. That's tragic that he has to do that. I do see a lot of patients, I think a couple of things. Number one, a lot of practices do now offer the ability for patients to message their primary care physician. My office has a patient portal. You can log in. It's like sending me a direct email, and they always get responded to within a couple of days. And I think that when you take that face-to-face out of things and they put a computer there, people are a little bit more able to say, hey, look, this is kind of bothering me. It takes a little bit of the embarrassment out of things. And then I can say, hey, look, I would like you to come in. Let's get this looked at. This is pretty serious. As far as physicians go, they should at least be having conversations with their patients. It's not, testicular exam is not a routine test. It should be done a little bit more frequently than it has been. A lot of older doctors aren't willing to do that as often as they should be, but it's also up to the patient to be an advocate for their own care. I'm not suggesting that this is falling on the onus falls on the patients by any means. Doctors should be definitely having these conversations, making sure that definitely, preventable diseases are there. Testicular cancer is preventable. It's one of the things that can easily be corrected if caught early enough. So I do want patients to feel that they should be able to talk to their doctor about anything, and it should fall on us as doctors to be available and non-judgmental and be able to, have those conversations. Hey, are you having any pains or any issues or any problems with these things? So physicians are very aggressive about making sure that all appropriate screening is done. Colonoscopies, screening for heart issues, screening for their cholesterol, screening for diabetes, all these preventable things, breast cancer, prostate cancer, all of it. It should be done with their yearly routine physical where questions should be answered. This is why I encourage patients to come in, whether or not they feel like they have anything wrong. Let's get all the blood work. Let's do a head to toe exam. Let's make sure everything's getting done. And that way you can feel like you're on top of things. Most insurance companies do offer incentives for things like that to get done. But, these things unfortunately slip through the cracks as a result of human nature. And that's the saddest thing as far as I'm concerned.
So Dr. Taweel, on that note, as we're approaching the new year, what are some of those routine medical exams and tests that patients should be seeking at this time of the year or at least once a year with their primary care physician or another medical official?
Well, this is definitely a busy time of year for me because right now everybody's deductible is getting met, and it resets on the first of the year for a lot of patients that have insurance. So everybody wants to get everything done. I always encourage patients to get a yearly physical, and you're going to get a lot of age-appropriate screening. We're going to screen you for smoking. We're going to check your blood pressure. We're going to check your liver, kidneys. We're going to check you for diabetes. We're going to check all of that fun stuff. And then you're going to hit those age milestones where you're going to get age-appropriate screening. For example, colonoscopies, which we talked about on a previous episode, the age for screening was 50. They're now creeping it down to 45. So I'm now surprising a lot of patients during their yearly physical saying, hey, I think you're due for a colonoscopy. And these are the things that are age appropriate. Once you start to hit those milestones, your doctor should be getting on your case about those things. I think that's about it for the most part. Just a yearly physical to make sure we're checking all the boxes. Those patients that come and see their doctor once a year when they have a head cold and they're avoiding the physical are really kind of, for lack of a better word, cheating themselves out of those really important vital tests that could potentially save their lives. In addition, physicians should be a little bit more aggressive about sending email blasts or getting a hold of their patients to say, hey, look, you haven't been here for a bit. It's time for a physical. I understand COVID is a concern, but we need to make sure that you're not going to, look in this direction and get hit by something coming in this direction.
Well, Dr. Taweel, we thank you for joining us. Before we let you go, anything else that would be important for people to keep in consideration regarding their health or their relationship with their primary care physician or physicians at this time?
Absolutely. First and foremost, get the vaccine if you haven't already, please. I'm begging you. Second of all, if you feel like your physician's being dismissive, I do think it's very important for you to just mention it to him and say, hey, him or her, and say, listen, this is a concern of mine. I will say patients are getting very good at that. And again, I think the addition of the ability to reach your physician outside of their office if they seem rushed, patients they're so polite a lot of times where they're like, oh, you seem busy. It's my job to be busy. Don't worry, we're here for you. I want patients to feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your doctor or bringing these things up to them, there is a disconnect. I cannot do my job if you're not telling me the information I need to hear. So if there's any breakdown in communication, you need to either discuss it with your doctor in a very open, non-confrontational manner, and or perhaps look for another physician that's going to be more willing to listen to the needs that you have, because this is your health. You're paying for it. You only get one body, and I suggest you do everything you can to take care of it. So I wish everybody a great holiday and a great new year.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me as always.
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel from Grand River Medical Associates, an internal medicine specialist on the Megacast. We're going to take one final break. On the other side, we'll go from medicine to our local parks and recreation and speak with the Director of Parks and Recreation for Oakland County, Chris Ward, who will join us next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal. the Michigan Crisis and Access Line for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sophia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
72.7% of high school students get less than the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. This can cause pain, obesity, and can very negatively affect your mental health. When you have a consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, you get sick less often, lose more weight, and have better relationships with those around you. For more information about the dangers of sleep deprivation, go to sleepfoundation.org. This message is brought to you by the WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
It's the Great Lakes water. And so what people do ends up in our waterways.
Flushable wipes are just evil. They should be thrown away. They're impossible to destroy, and they can cause significant problems.
One of the main things when you're cooking is to not dump fats, oils, and greases down your drains.
They stick to the sides of pipes, they stick to everything they come in contact with. Don't put it down the sink.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe and healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe, here in our studio in West Bloomfield Township, although we broadcast all throughout Oakland County, where we originate, and throughout the state of Michigan on a number of different outlets, including My Michigan TV. Learn more information and find links to everywhere that we broadcast, as well as links to find all of our interviews and full episodes on demand at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now is the new Parks Director of Oakland County Parks and Recreation, Chris Ward, with us on the Megacast. Named the director this past November. Chris, thank you for being with us, and welcome to Oakland County.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So you just started your job as the Director of Oakland County Parks and Recreation. Tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to Oakland County Parks.
Thanks for the opportunity. I've been with Oakland County government for the last 10 years. Previously to that, served in the legislature. Excuse me. So I've worked under the county clerk, worked for the Board of Commissioners and the county executive, and this opportunity to dive in and work in our park and recreation system was just a wonderful chance to make a difference. We all know, probably more so than ever before, the importance of parks, how they play in our lives. They've been a lifeline to so many during the pandemic. Just a key element in having healthy and safe communities. So just very pleased to be on board at Oakland County Parks and Recreation.
So Chris, as you said, you've worked in many other capacities in Oakland County and many different areas of our county government here locally. Over the past 10 years, you've been affiliated with the county. What drew you to this position to be the director of the Parks and Recreation Department for Oakland County?
As I said, we now know probably more so than ever before the importance that parks and recreation programming have in promoting healthy, safe lifestyles. During the pandemic, we had record attendance at our parks, and we saw that throughout the country. So, this was an opportunity to really get myself deep into preserving that wonderful resource that we have and building upon it, and looking for opportunities to partner with local governments and nonprofits to address those areas where we could improve services and reach people that have access issues in our community.
So you've mentioned how, generally speaking, we've realized how much more important parks have been in our regular lives over the course of the pandemic. How has the county population's relationship with its county parks and with individual municipalities and their parks, how has that dynamic changed over the course of the pandemic, and how does that then inform you and your staff at Oakland County Parks about the ways that you approach leading this organization going forward?
So, one of the things that we're focusing on, there is an unprecedented amount of funding coming down to the state, the local, the county government. And because of that, the important role that parks played during the pandemic as a de-stressor, as an opportunity to get out of the house and enjoy some nature and find a little peace during a very challenging time. A high priority for us is to put together a plan of proposals to make additional investments in our county parks and partner with local government recreation programmings to enhance what we're doing and bring that to our county leadership and ask for their support for dedication of a portion of the funding they've received.
So we're joined by Chris Ward. He is the Parks Director of Oakland County Parks and Recreation, joining us on the Megacast. And Oakland County Parks and Recreation recently announced it's offering free park entry on upcoming December holidays that include Christmas Eve on Friday of this week, Christmas Day at Saturday, December 25th, New Year's Eve next week, Friday. At many of its locations, park hours 30 minutes before sunrise to 30 minutes before sunset, or as posted at those locations. What's behind the decision to open those parks up to free entry during on these specific holiday dates?
Well, this has been a longstanding tradition. It's our way of saying thank you to the taxpayers who support the Oakland County Park system, and an opportunity for us to showcase our 6,700 plus acres of beautiful, wonderful park and recreation land. And certainly it's a time when people have even more stress in their lives as they work through the holidays. So, it's our way of welcoming you to our park system. You can get out on our trails. You could take your canine companion friend to one of our 3 dog parks. And we have, winter activities, including fat tire biking up at Addison Oaks, and sledding at Waterford Oaks, depending on the weather.
And then, so people are going to be looking as we get further into the winter. We have a little bit of snow today, and we've had consistent snow on the ground fairly recently. As we get further into the winter and we start to see this weather be more consistent with a Michigan winter, what are some of the common winter activities that are available for people that want to stay local but still engage in some of those fun winter experiences that are available here in Oakland County's parks?
Yeah, we have some tremendous trails, some paved, which are, a little easier access. So if you're looking for snowshoeing or cross-country skiing, we have more rustic trails available. We do have that sledding hill at Waterford Oaks that I mentioned, and fat tire biking trail up at Addison Oaks are a few highlights there.
And so are there any upcoming changes or additions to Oakland County's parks that the residents of the county or visitors can be expecting to see either begin or be able to experience in the 2022 year?
We are building upon, in the last few years, we opened our ORV park up in Holly, which is just a really cool new facility. And that's the newest addition to the parks system. We're looking at, as I mentioned, to ask for some support for investments in our parks. In the next couple of years, we should be able to enhance our facilities, our offerings, our amenities. So that's what comes to mind at the top of my head.
We're joined by Chris Ward. He's the Parks Director of Oakland County Parks and Recreation, joining us on the Megacast. Chris, another few minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that would be important for our audience to know about our park system as we're heading into the winter, or any other exciting news coming up with Oakland County Parks and Recreation?
One thing I'd really like to highlight is the opportunity that exists to come and work at our park system. Every year, annually, for the spring, summer, early fall season, we hire 400 to 700 seasonal part-time individuals, and they range from students to senior citizens. And it's a great place to work. It's a great place to build lasting memories, build friendships, and make a big difference in your community. So, I would encourage people who are either interested in themselves or that like to encourage a member of their family to become an employee at Parks, to take a look at our website at oakgov.com/parks, or give us a call, and we'd love to have you join our team.
Chris, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, thank you.
Chris Ward is the new Parks Director of Oakland County Parks and Recreation. As he said, you can find more information by going to their website at oakgov.com/parks. That's oakgov.com/parks, where you can find more information about everything that they're doing over there at Oakland County Parks, all their 2022 events, as well as information on their park and trail locator. Shop through their Oakland County Parks shop. You can get in contact with them as well and learn more about all the different activities available, such as, of course, those walking trails and those biking trails, the farmers market, nature centers, off-road vehicle opportunities, golf, and more that's available through Oakland County Parks. Again, that is oakgov.com/parks, or just navigate the Oakland County website. Scroll down over departments and select parks to go to their website, oakgov.com/parks. We're going to take one final break. On the other side, we'll wrap up our new Megacast shows for the year, tell you what's going on over the next few days, this week and next week, as we approach the New Year holiday, and give you a preview of our next year's episodes of the Megacast. That's all coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Did you know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior.
These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance.
They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different.
One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games?
Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe here in our studio in West Bloomfield, although we broadcast all throughout the state of Michigan on a number of different outlets. You can find more information about our show on our website anytime at civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you'll be able to find all of our interviews from today's show, including our last interview, a really interesting interview with Chris Ward, the Parks Director now over at Oakland County Parks, on our website, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Just about 2 minutes left on our show today, and that is our final new show of the year here on the Megacast. This will be taking the rest of this week leading up to the Christmas holiday and all of the next week, the last week of the year, off from doing our regular programming here at Civic Center TV. We'll be running a best of episode, going back and reviewing some of our favorite episodes, favorite interviews from recent editions of the Megacast over the next week and a half or so that we will be off the air from regular episodes. But we'll be back just after the new year with new episodes of the Megacast as well. So we right back here, same spot, same place, every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until 12 noon. And of course, you can find all of our programming on our website at civiccentertv.com. Big thank you to all of our guests today: Chris Ward, the new Director of Parks and Recreation at Oakland County; Dr. Jamie Taweel from Grand River Medical Associates; Santa Claus from Being Santa; Dr. Elizabeth Bulat, the Medical Director of Addiction Medicine at Henry Ford Maplegrove Center; and of course, Theresa Wozniak, attorney at law fighting to get children out of abusive homes and the founder of the Justice Lawyer League. Also, a big thank you to our crew: Calvin Brown, our studio producer and board operator; Brandon Schreiber, who is our Zoom producer today via My Michigan TV; Larry Nyland, our booking producer, getting our guests scheduled for the show and getting us, helping us get prepared to interview them each and every day; and Mandy Mushkin at Master Control, helping us push some of those buttons at the end to get off the air and get back on the air each and every day with us on the Megacast here in our studio at Green Media Center in West Bloomfield. That is it for our regular editions of the Megacast this year. Thank you for tuning in to us for this second year of Megacast programming. We're excited to be back with you after the new year and join you in 2022. Coming up next on Civic Center TV, it's the Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. On My Michigan TV, it's more of their great programming, and then we will return with new episodes in 2022.